The annual company gala was a glittering affair held in a sleek downtown hotel ballroom, all chandeliers and champagne. My husband David had worked for the tech firm for a decade, climbing to senior engineer through grit and late nights. I sat at our table, proud in my navy dress, watching him mingle with colleagues. The CEO Richard, a man known for his charm and sharp tongue, took the stage for his speech. David had warned me about Richard's ego, but nothing prepared me for what came next. Richard started with the usual, praising the company's growth, tossing out buzzwords like innovation. Then his tone shifted, his smile turning sly. "Some of you think you're indispensable," he said, his eyes locking on David. "Like our friend David, who thinks his little projects keep this company afloat." The room chuckled, but it was uneasy, the air tightening. He mocked David's latest software fix, calling it cute and overhyped, implying David was coasting on outdated skills. My heart pounded. This wasn't a roast. It was a public shaming. David sat beside me, his face unreadable, but I saw his jaw clench. The room's laughter faded, eyes darting to him, expecting him to shrink. Richard, relishing the moment, pressed on, suggesting David's team was carrying him. I squeezed David's hand under the table, furious, but he didn't flinch. Instead he stood, his movements slow, deliberate, and the room went quiet, every eye on him. "Richard," David said, his voice cold, cutting through the silence like ice. "If my work is so cute, why does your board rely on my little projects to hit your quarterly numbers?" He paused, letting the words sink in. "Maybe you should check the data before you speak. My team's not carrying me. I'm carrying this company's reputation." The room froze. Richard's smirk was gone, his face paling as whispers rippled through the crowd. David sat down, his expression calm, but I saw the fire in his eyes. I squeezed his hand again, pride swelling despite the tension. Richard stammered, trying to pivot back to his speech, but the energy had shifted. Colleagues glanced at David with respect, some nodding subtly. The CEO's attempt to humiliate him had backfired, exposing his own pettiness. I leaned over, whispering, "You're incredible." David just gave a small smile, but I knew he felt the weight of the moment. After the gala, colleagues approached David, offering quiet support. "About time someone called him out," one said. Another mentioned Richard's history of targeting those he saw as threats. David's work, his late nights debugging code. His mentorship of younger engineers had always been vital, but he'd never boasted. Richard's attack was personal, maybe spurred by David's recent pushback in a meeting. But David's response had been surgical, undeniable. At home, David was quiet, the adrenaline fading. "I didn't want to do that," he said, staring at his coffee. I sat beside him, touching his arm. "You had to." He crossed the line. David nodded, admitting he'd felt the sting of Richard's words, the doubt they'd planted. I reminded him of his value not just to the company but to me, to us. His icy reply hadn't just silenced the room, it had reclaimed his worth. The next week, whispers spread at work. Richard's authority took a hit. The board, hearing of the gala, questioned his leadership style. David's team rallied around him, their loyalty fiercer than ever. He didn't gloat. He just kept working, his focus unwavering. But I noticed a change. He spoke up more in meetings, his confidence sharper, no longer muted by Richard's shadow. One evening as we cooked dinner, David laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. "You know, I almost thanked Richard," he said. "His stunt made me realize I'm done playing small." I grinned, kissing his cheek. The CEO's attempt to shame him had backfired spectacularly. Not because David fought dirty but because he fought true. His words, cold and precise, had stunned the room into silence and reminded everyone, including himself, who he really was. Our marriage felt stronger after that night. David's stand wasn't just for him. It was for us, for the life we'd built through his quiet strength. Richard's humiliation attempt had been a spark, but David's response was the fire, and it burned brighter than any CEO's ego ever could.